Welcome. Going to try to put together a quick tutorial, be able to explain how to set up the editor with Battlefield 2 and explain how to get all the content to show up and get you up and running and ready to learn how to mess around with BF2, AIX, whatever mod you want really, but I'm going to focus with AIX. So anyways, once you have the first things first, you got to have the game installed. Best things, complete collection gives you everything. Special forces, whatever. You're going to want to get all the mods that you plan on working with. For us, we're going to use AIX because it's easiest for me to explain because it's the one I'm most familiar with. At any rate, and thanks to those guys that made that mod. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. Anywho, we're going to get into your program files x86 directory where I'm at. Find EA games after you've installed. Find your Battlefield 2. This backup, I don't know where that came from, but it's not pertinent. Be it Battlefield 2, and now you've got Battlefield 2, and you'll want to install the editor. One thing you want to be certain of is when you run the installer, as well as the shortcuts that it may make sure you go into right-click properties before you install it and before you run it. And verify that your compatibility mode is set to Service Pack 3. Okay? And you can check the Run as Administrator. It doesn't really matter, but it's got to be in compatibility mode for Service Pack 3 or it will fail. There you go. And assuming that you have Windows 7 or beyond XP. So, once you know that, that's great. Now setting up the mod. So, once you've installed your mods, never work out of the same mod that you installed. What you want to do is right-click copy, and paste in another copy of the mod. It'll say AIX2 copy, right? Well, rename that to like AIX2 edit. That way it's easy to know, okay, this is my edit mod. This is the one that I'm working out of. So once you have that installed, just like AIX2 untouched, it has, let's see here, it has objects folder already there, and menu, but it doesn't have a common folder. So what we're going to do is you're going to go here into your AIX2 edit mod, and you want to make sure that you have an objects, a menu, and a common folder. They need to be there because the game reads the files unpacked, not in zips. It cannot read from zips. So what you want to do is take each one of these, common client, common server, and extract to common folder here. And then you want to do the same, menu client, menu server, to your menu folder. And then you want to extract objects client and server to the objects folder. And that will open up, and you'll end up with all the files in the mod available for yourself to use within the editor. And as you can see, menus got all the menu stuff. So if you open the zip files, you should see about the same folder structure in your folders that you've extracted to. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, replay it there and try again. But so what like I said, you're going to extract each one to its appropriate folder. So common client and server, go to the common folder combined. Menu client, menu server, go to the menu folder combined. And same with objects client and objects server. Okay, now this rule follows as well. Once you've gotten the mod content in the mod, you also want to go to your levels folder. Now any mods that you might have, mini mods that you might have present, will have assets at the very bottom of your levels folder. And they'll be all in zip file format, and usually you're going to see a menu client and then a server and client zip, as you can see. Those server, and when they're broken this way, these are the client and server zips here are objects zips. So you want to extract those guys to your objects folder of your mod, like we did earlier. And then the menu client you want to send to the menu folder. And you want to do that with all these ones that are broken up as objects client server. The only catch is the NWM content is the objects are the objects. That's client and server combined in one object zip. We did it just for ourselves for simplicity. Is it the best way? No. It's obviously more efficient for the engine to read if it's broken up between client and server. However, with the computers today, I don't think it's really struggling too bad with it. So But at any rate, ours will, the NWM stuff will always have it labeled as objects, and that means it goes straight to objects. And then the menu clients always go to the menu, and the menu goes to menu. So what you want to do is get all this content into their appropriate folders in your mod, so that the editor can read that stuff. Now that same rule will apply with, say, maps that have content within them. So let's see if we can find one here, just for an example. I'm not sure. Here's one, right? This one has one called tree zip. This one has one called common zip. All right, common zip goes to the common folder. It's more than likely terrain textures, stuff like that. It's level-based common stuff usually, and some of it's not, but either way, it's labeled common. When you open it up, you'll see terrain, textures, detail. So that definitely goes in the common folder. So you'd extract that to the common, and the tree zip, that I can tell you is objects. Anytime you see an object zip that contains a static objects or vegetation, and effects can be in. You can't use that as a metering thing to determine whether it's an object zip. But I know this one is an object zip, so if you see the tree zip, it's an object zip. That'll get extracted to your objects folder of your mod, just as before. That's how you get all the content that you want to add to your editor to be able to manipulate, place, do whatever you want to do with it into your editor. So anyway, once you have this established, now you have this working edit mod, and you've got all your content where it belongs and placed in those folders. The next step would be to open the editor. When you open the editor, it's not all going to be readily available when you open it. Mine will be, because it's already set up, and I haven't really wiped it to do this. But you need to unlock it within the editor. So we verify our editor. Since it's first run, we're going to make sure that our compatibility mode on our shortcut is also correct, and this one is, so it's Windows XP Service Pack 3, and run as administrator, and check box for the, So at any rate, we'll close that out, fire it up, and mine will take a while to load because everything has been kind of set up. Now when you first fire it up, it'll ask for the startup mod. You want to start out of your edit mod, and mind you, it takes a while, especially once you've got all the content in it. It's a lot of stuff it's reading. You'll see a lot of red. The red is either it can't find it, or it's got a duplicate and it's rewriting the path. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to have red errors. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's broken. It just means that something's a little screwy and it's trying to correct it, or it could be an issue. But for this tutorial, I'm not going to get into that, and half of that stuff it's kind of tough to explain. But unless you have a fatal error, I wouldn't worry too much. So, anyways, as this goes, pokey pokey. Now, hopefully you can read this print and stuff. I don't know how to really record a video very well, so forgive me if it's crappy, but at least it's something. Since the editor forums went down, it's not going to be as easy to find and tips and tricks and stuff, so I figured I'd at least put something together to start. And if need be, if anybody's interested in any more little quick toots and how I've done things, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm good at it. It's just I'm just offering how I've done it. Whether it's right or wrong, at least it'll get you started, maybe. Okay, so now we've got the editor fired up, and basically one thing to note is to make life easier for you as you're working in it, you have to do this every time you load it, at least for me. Drag this window out where you can actually read what you're looking at. Okay, so we've got the editor installed ready. Now, once you've loaded your editor with the edit mod and with the new content, you need to go up to the mod tab, mod manager. Okay, and you'll see settings. We don't care about that, but what we do care about is editor content. You see all these check boxes? When you get them, they'll be all white. They'll be all unchecked. You want to make sure that they're all checked, because when you got them all checked, that means the editor says, oh, I recognize that folder, I will load this. So without that, none of that stuff you put in there will show up. In this window over here, there's ways of adding and specific files that maybe doesn't recognize this or that. If it's all in here, you shouldn't have to even mess with that. So at any rate, all you need to do here is make sure the boxes are checked, click apply, and then you'll have to click OK after it finishes loading. Let's let that do its job. And it's going to be fast for me. When you do it, it may take a good, I don't know, half hour for it to load everything. It all depends on your system, depends on how much stuff you added, but it does take a while. And click OK to submit that. Okay. Now when we open up our AX2 edit, we should see at least a couple of folders. You probably won't see a common. It doesn't really show up in there, but it's still accessible. At any rate, if you go through this, all those boxes that were checked, all those folders are available in here. Now mine's got some really wacky stuff in there. It's not the standard setup, but it gives you an idea that whatever's in your AIX will be available there to play with. So for instance, if I go, that was static objects, go down to say the good stuff, the vehicles. So now air, and those are all the different helicopters that I've added to my mod, and planes and all that happy stuff for the air side of it. So then once you get in the editor, you can go to your object editor easily and just pick one of these, and if everything's extracted correctly, you should have a helicopter show up in here when you click and drag and drop it. And there it is. And if you want to, whatever, input it, fire it up, whatever. So that gets everything in there, right? Great. Well, that's half the battle. At least now your editor's got the content that's necessary to run. One other important thing I wanted to note was, now that we got that figured out, let me close this out. Alright, one thing to note, after your editor's installed, it creates a new folder called the BF2 editor. Haha, how about that? These 3 light map samples files, they were on the net. I have them. I might be able to put a post up or a link at some point and make it so you can download them if you don't have them, but they have the samples so that you can actually light map a map with the original BF2 statics that had samples, so that you can light map the actual objects. Without a light map sample for an object, it will not light map it. So anyway, that's what those are. You may not have them, you may. Another thing to note is in settings. In the settings folder of this, you will find where is it? The plugin configuration settings. If you go in here, ones are on, zeros are off. Single player editor. It's an important thing to note, and this is for a later tutorial with maps, but when you do ENV maps, which creates the reflections on the water, displays the waves, all that stuff that it attributes to. When you generate them, you want to have the single player editor set to 0, so that it's not active when you generate them. Once it's been generated, then you can set it back to 1. If you don't, you'll end up with, like in your reflections in your map, you'll end up with these weird numbers that reflect off the water, and it's AI that's goofing it up. At any rate, I just thought I'd throw that in there as a little tip. If you're not working with the single player side of it, you just set that to 0. If you work in single player side of it, just be mindful that when you do your ENV maps that you need to disable that and then re-enable it after you're done. But like I said, that's for a later tutorial, but so that you know where you can set your active plugins for the editor. That's where it's at. as well as another thing is the content. In the content, you can kind of add folders, and it's basically following suit with this, with the BF2 thing. This is what unlocks what folders are available in the editor for you by default. Well, you could make a copy of that and make your own for AIX2 edit, which I'm trying to find it in the line here. Might be easier just to find AIX. Okay, so anyways, this should be actually from the yeah, here, yeah, like that. Anyway, so this is my mod AIX2 folder, and I've got it, you know, filled out that way, you know, but whatever. If you have trouble with it, you can play with this too, and just set it up in the same structure as this, and you can always add whatever folder, you know, backslash kits, backslash soldiers, backslash, you know, static objects, whatever, you know, whatever folders should be available in your objects should show up there. So at any rate, that is just to be aware, and I may give a copy of what I have, just if you're working in AIX, you'll have what you know, this works for me, whether it's right or wrong, it works. So maybe I'll make those files available and you can just drag and drop and replace them. Save, no, yes. Anyway, now one other thing to note, go back and you'll find mods. This is very important. You need to have, you need to make your own AIX2 edit folder within your BF2 editor folder. So again, we're at the BF2 editor folder in your Battlefield 2 directory. So Battlefield editor, mods, and you'll see I have a AIX2 edit, level editor, level settings. These are all the teams. You have to have this in here. And basically you can get them, you know, the different team setup straight out of AIX, out of their levels. You find one where it's, you know, UN versus US, MEC versus Chinese, US versus Chinese, and US versus MEC, or whatever, you know, setup you got. Again, I'll give you the files, or access to the files if you'd like. That way you can just drag and drop in there. But it's basically just copied from BF2. You make a copy of this one for BF2, and then you just need to edit the teams and make sure all the team setups are and the soldiers types, because BF2 has a different soldier. This one's US heavy and US light and such, whereas AIX has just soldier. Like they've got theirs, it's a little different. See, Spec Ops soldier, sniper soldier. It's important. The map will crash if it doesn't have the proper soldiers and kits, and they're all based in the init.con of each map basically. So you want to have this correct, as you can see here. I'll let you scroll through it in case you need to see it and write it yourself. But at any rate, you can figure this out. Maybe I'll post like a copy of this in the forums or something of that nature, so you can write it in there as needed. The other thing that's really kind of neat about this is you can make your own object spawner defcon. And what that does is it gives you the object spawner definition, so that you can right click and place on a map whatever set of vehicles for each team you want to spawn where. So if, you can copy, you can take the one from BF2 and add it to yours, and then add on whatever vehicles you want in the same basic format. Like they have this line here, for instance, object spawner def add def definition, AIX Chinese US underscore gunship heli, and then you would replace the two. These are two helicopters, so there's a space, and then there's one helicopter for team 1, and then another helicopter for team 2 by the name of the helicopter within the files. So you can replace them, add a line and replace them with whatever you want. So if you wanted a helicopter, get this one. If you want to add a vertical takeoff, use the VTOL one. If you want to add a jet that's a bomber or a fighter or something, so on and so forth, you just follow the file structure and just add your own lines, and it'll make it available. So other than that, I don't think there's anything else that I'm thinking of that I'm missing off the top of my head. So I think I will conclude this. Hopefully it'll shed some light. Hopefully it makes it a little easier. If there's any questions, you can always post them in the forums, and somebody will hopefully get to you in a reasonable amount of time. And like I say again, our forums are at Nightwatch Militia, and I can be reached on Skype at username Fred Mohawk if you would like to ask a question or two. I can't guarantee my availability all the time, but I can, if I get a chance, I will certainly try to send you a little info. All right? Thanks, and good luck with it. Bye-bye.